Good afternoon, my dear students. In today's lesson, we are going to talk about the Old English history, overview of periods of early English history, prehistory. Pre-Roman, prehistorical up to 55 BC, and the second one is the Roman occupation, 55 BC, 410 AD. The third one is Anglo-Saxon period, from 410 to 787 AD. The fourth one is the Viking invasions, 787 to 1066 AD. So Norman conquest begins in 1066. So prehistorical, pre-Roman. It's Stonehenge. Yes, you know it's in England. It's situated in Stonehenge also. The prehistorical, pre-Roman. The island we know as England was occupied by a race of people called the Celts. One of the tribes was called the Britons of Britons, where we get the term Briton. The Celts were pagans, and their religion was known as animism, a Latin word for spirit. Celts saw spirits everywhere. Druids were their priests. Their role was to go between the gods and the people. Roman occupation, Hadrian's Wall. So important events during the Roman occupation. Julius Caesar began invasion or occupation in 55 BC. So occupation completed by Claudius in 1st century AD. So Hadrian's Wall built about 122 AD. Romans leave in 410 AD, and because Visigoths attacked Rome. St. Augustine, so the other St. Augustine lands in Kent in 597, and the Covenanters, King Eadbald, King of Kent, the oldest Saxon settlement to Christianity, becomes fourth Archbishop of Canterbury. Important culture and the historical results of the Roman occupation. So, military, strong armed legions, yes, pushed Celts into the Wales and Ireland, so prevented Vikings from raiding for 700 years. Warren Hollister writes, Rome's greatest gift to Britain was peace. Infrastructure, government fell apart when they left, and the walls, villas, public baths. Some remains still exist. Language and writing. Latin was official language, and the practice of recording history led to earliest English literature being documentary. So about the religion, Christianity beginning to take hold, especially after St. Augustine converts King Ethelbert. The most important results of the Roman occupation is the Latin heavily influenced the English language. Relative peace, and Christianity begins to take hold in England, but doesn't fully displace paganism for several hundred years. The Anglo-Saxon period, 410 to 787. So in the map you can see the location of the old Anglo-Saxon tribes. Yes. Important events in the first Anglo-Saxon period, 410 to 450, Angles and the Saxons invade from Baltic shores of Germany, and the Jews invade from the Jutland Peninsula in Denmark. The Geats are a tribe from Jutland, and the 9 Anglo-Saxon kingdoms eventually became the Anglo-Saxon Heptarchy. England not unified of 7 sovereign kingdoms. Anglo-Saxon Heptarchy. Heptarchy is the 7 kingdoms. The first one is the Kent, Sussex, South Saxon, East Anglia, Northumbria, Mersey, and Wessex. So, Viking invasions from 700 1087 to 1066. Vikings. By definition, Vikings were seafaring explorers, traders, and warriors, Scandinavians during the 8th through 11th centuries. Oddly enough, the Anglo-Saxon and the Jute heritage wasn't much different from the Vikings. They too were Scandinavian invaders. In fact, some Vikings were also called Norsemen, which is related to yet another culture, this one French, which made conquest of England. The Normans and the Williams the Conqueror in 1066. They were all Vikings. Except for the Celts and the Romans, all of the cultural who successfully invaded England in the first millennium were from northern Europe at one time or another. The Angles and the Saxons, Frisians and the Jutes were from the Baltic region, and the Normans were primarily from Normandy and had originally been from Norway. The Celts were indigenous at the time of the Roman conquest and therefore considered England's natives. Important results of the Viking invasions. Politically and culturally. Continued political instability and the conflict. For example, tribal warrior, there were no central government or church, and the Anglo-Saxon code, more than this when were Beowulf. Linguistically, the English language at its earliest. The English language is born during the first millennium and is known as Old English. Anglo-Saxon is a term for the culture. Old English is many Germany in grammar and syntax and morphology. And the lexicon. Words, the core of the modern English, is vastly influenced by this early linguistic DNA. But even Germanic language derived from a theoretical Proto-Indo-European language, the grandparent of classical language such as Greek, Sanskrit, Latin, and German. Lots of dialects of Old English, as one might imagine. This is because there were several separate kingdoms, many founded by essentially 5 or 6 different cultures: Angles and Saxons, Frisians, Jutes, and Danes and Swedes. Alfred the Great was one of the first Anglo-Saxon kings of Prussian Vikings back. We better boil this important results down. Lots of ongoing tribal fights and the wars led to lots of intermingling of similar but different German languages interrupted by more Viking invasions, which gave way to some political innovations. Old English, the earliest form of our language. So, early England created by 3 invasions: Roman occupation, Anglo-Saxon and the Viking invasion, and the last one is the Germanic. Norman invasion. In 1066, at the Battle of Hastings, the Normans, powerful northern Frenchmen, defeated the English and started a centuries-long conquest of England. 2 most important effects. French becomes official language of politics and power and exerts enormous influence on Old English. England begins in unifying under a French political system, much of which is still with us even in the USA today. Under the Anglo-Saxon period, in review, the pre-Anglo-Saxon, really prehistorical Celtic peoples, Roman occupation, Anglo-Saxon Viking, Angles, Saxon, Frisian, and Jutes. Viking raids, invasions begins 8th and 10th. Norman invasion, occupation really in the Middle Ages. Battle of Hastings in 1066. Then about the 4 centuries of French rule. A short history of our language. How English got to be so hard to study, but it's still so beautiful to hear and read. So, quick history of English language. Old English dates from approximately 400 AD to 1066. Middle English dates from approximately 1066 1485. They are quite different to the eye and the ear. Old English is nearly impossible to read or understand without studying it, much like and the English speaker today would study French, Latin, or Chinese. Another way of looking at the history of the English. Old English in the inner table, yeah? Old English, vowel from vowel in there. So, Middle English, Early English. So, English, Celtic from 1700 or 400 BC to 55 BC. Latin, German, French, Old English, and the Middle English, very difficult language, but one perfect for limitless and beautiful expression. So, English is the melting pot of Indo-European language. Celtic, Latin, German, French. Yes, French. So, transition to vowel. The major text we will read from this period is the epic vowel. It is a story of a Scandinavian saint warrior knight who comes to help a neighboring tribe, the Danes, who are being attacked by a monster. We study English history to understand the context of the Beowulf, and we study Beowulf to understand the world, which was Old England. According to Venerable Bede, an early English historian who lived in the 8th century, the Britons called the Romans for help when the Picts and Scots were attacking them. According to Venerable Bede, an early English historian who lived in the 8th century, the Britons called the Romans for help when the Picts and the Scots were attacking them BC. Yes, hundreds of years later, the Britons called the Saxons to help them when the Romans couldn't. The Saxons came from parts beyond the sea. This journey of Germanic peoples to England from parts beyond the sea is a prototypical story for the first millennium of Europe English history. So, in this table you can see the periods of the Old English and the Middle English, yes, Early Modern English is the periods. Old English period will be from beginning from 400 and to 1066, and the Middle English will be from 166 to 1485, and the Early Modern English will be beginning from 1485 and 1400. Shakespeare's from here, yeah. So Chaucer, Old English, and the Middle English, Early Modern English will be Modern English also. Old English, yes, dates from approximately 400 AD to 1066. Middle English dates from approximately 1066 and 1485. So they are quite different to the eye and the ear. Old English is not impossible to read, understand without studying it, much like an English speaker today would study French, Latin, and Chinese. So the dating of the beginnings of is difficult. Scholars only have written texts in Old English beginning in around 700 AD, but people in English must have been speaking version of Old English period to works being written in the vernacular opposite to Latin. So, my dear students, my dear colleagues, thanks to attention, and in the next lesson we are going to talk about the Anglo-Saxon. So, thank you very much for your attention. Goodbye, my dear students.